Been kind of chilly around here for a couple weeks now. Been getting down below 10 degrees Fahrenheit. What's that, minus 13, 14 Celsius. Right now it's the middle of the day and it's got up to about 16, 17, 18, something like that. It's about minus 10. I've been having fires going in the hangar and the shop to try to keep things from freezing. The shop gets nice and warm, but the hangar, with all my heaters going, I can just barely keep it above freezing. But I haven't had a fire in it for a few days now. I finally let the fires go out. I'm running out of firewood. And I haven't been able to get any more firewood, or haven't cut any more firewood, because I haven't had a dry place to keep it. Well, I had it kind of a shed roof off of a shed that I had, and the shed collapsed, and I built it probably about 15, 16 years ago, and it was just made out of native hemlock raw logs that I just punched down into the ground and then put some stringers on them and some 2x4s and some tin over it, and I only expected it to last for a couple, 3 years at the most. My shed roof for the firewood was attached to that, and that came off and exposed all my firewood to the rain. So I need to build a new cover for my firewood pile so I can cut some. I've got a bunch of slabs that I can cut up, and then there's a nice dead hemlock tree across the road that I can cut. So the first thing I did was I went over and put a strap around the roof that I had, the shed roof that I had for the firewood. I picked it up, drug it out of where it was at, and brought it over here to this pad that we made last year. And then I went out in the woods and cut a few yellow cedar poles, and I'll make a little framework for that to stand up to put the roof on. This is pretty rough carpentry. I've taken one pole and cut it off to 6.5 feet. I've got another smaller one. I'm going to cut it to 5 feet. That'll give me a 1.5 foot drop on the roof. I'll make both sides identical to that the same way. Make 2 end panels. And then I cut some longer poles there that I can use for stretchers between the panels and kind of box them in. First thing I did was I took the saw and I cut the ends off the logs that the poles where the undercuts were on them, and I wanted a flat on the bottom so it'll rest good on the ground. Now we'll cut them off to length. Nothing precise about this, it's just rough chainsaw carpentry. Those 7.5 feet apart, or 7 feet apart, so it's not too critical. little bit of material off of both sides of that, so I got a flat spot. I scrub more off of the butt end of this one, the big end of this one, so I don't have to drive screws through so much material. And I'll go ahead and get a couple timber lock screws and drive in one in each one of those. I'm going to only put one in each one of those now because I want to be able to adjust it for square, for racking. If I put those in there tight, then they won't move. It'll be harder to get them to move to adjust them for racking. Well, I got some 5-inch ledger tight lag bolts. These work pretty good. They're kind of self-drilling, and they got a washer head on them, and they come with a driver bit. I use my 1/2-inch Milwaukee hammer drill to drive those in. And I think 5-inch will work. If it looks like I don't have quite enough shank on the 5-inch, I'll just go ahead and scrub some more wood off of that stringer there. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to scrub a little bit of more wood off of that stringer. Battery. Well, that's a start. Feet. Okay. All right, that's close. So that's got to go that way a little bit. There we go. $47. 47, that's pretty close. pretty close. That's pretty close. There's one end panel roughed in. I'm going to run a diagonal across from one to the other, and then we'll make the other one exactly the same way. Well, I let this sit for a day or so. Got a little frostier than it was. Ready to get back to it. All I'm going to do now with this side is bolt this diagonal brace down. It's just rough measurements on here. There's nothing exact. Close is good enough here. I could take the time to run center lines down all of those and exact measure them out and everything. I'm not going to do that. This is just a rough construction. So I've taken and measured this upright here and put a mark on it, just a broad mark there at 5 feet. The other upright over there is 5 feet, and then I run diagonals between the two of them and got them within an inch or so of being a square, which, considering the taper in the wood and all of that kind of stuff, is actually pretty good. It's probably within an inch, maybe less. Now I got a small piece there that I'm going to put in as a diagonal. I'm going to go ahead and cut the angle there so it butts up against both that top board pole and the bottom one, and fit it in and screw it down. Then I'll go ahead and put some more screws in some of those joints so everything so it doesn't rack anymore after that. With this diagonal in here, that should hold it pretty stiff. But I got the saw there. I've started it up and got it running. It's 12 degrees out here so far this morning, and it's a good idea to leave that saw idle and run so that the chain oil loosens up on it, gets warmed up on it, and will run, help lubricate the chain.
Come here, Haji. Come here, Hannah. Come here, Hannah. There's my baby girl. Oh, he's a big boy. Is he a pretty big boy? Is he a pretty big boy? Oh, yes, sir. Did you guys go for your morning walk? Did you get for your morning walk, huh? Yes, you did. Yeah, what's going on?
By putting that diagonal in there between these two stretchers, you can approximate the angle to get those flush together, but it's not going to be exact because once you cut an angle there, it's going to keep changing a little bit as it goes up against there. So I got a start on it, and now once I got it started and fit it in there, if I just run the saw up and down between the two pieces, I can get it to fit pretty tight. Alright, that fits pretty tight. We'll make a little bit of a bit on the big end down here. I'll cut between the two posts in the diagonal a little bit to get that to come down a little bit and kind of make a socket or a tight spot for it to fit in there on that other piece. Alright, that fits pretty tight. Same thing on this one, just a little bit. Alright. I'll get some flags now and finish bolting that thing down. Alright, still as square as it's going to get. And when I drove those in the other day, they went in pretty tight. In fact, I wound up breaking one of them off. They worked up a pretty good bunch of heat in there and some torque, so I'm going to put some bucky on these to lubricate the threads up a little bit. That stuff's pretty stiff. What it is it's beeswax. I just took the old toilet rings, seal rings off the bottom of the toilet when we remodeled the house and put a new toilet in. I just took a couple of the old rings and melted them down. And that works pretty good for lubricating these screws. That battery maybe it's cold. It's set in there since I used it the other day, so yeah, I got some battery on the charger warmed up, so I'll probably have to get it. Okay, now that should make that thing up pretty good. Put it down on the ground, it won't have so far to fall. Alright, that should work pretty good. There's one end panel. Oh yeah, that's pretty stout. One end panel. Yeah. That stuff's a lot heavier than it used to be. Seemed like those things were that heavy 30 years ago. I think gravity's changing. You know, with this global warming, I think you got to be worrying about global gravity change. Okay. Yes. That's good. I had this all laid out before I went to run the excavator. I got thinking about it and decided to lay it out a little different. I'll make a mirror image out of it over what the other one was, and I can put these frame portions on the inside of the shed, and then there's going to be 3 long stringers that run the length of the shed, and then I can go ahead and rest those on these stretchers that are here, and then you can also use those to stack the wood up against. So I went ahead and swapped everything around here to make a mirror image out of it, and I've got it kind of laid out. And so I'll go ahead and do exactly the same thing with this one that I did with the other one. Just run the saw on them a little bit and kind of mate the pieces up together, or make seats for them where they'll fit together, and put some lags in them, and then I'll put a diagonal on there and square it up, and that side will be done. That won't take much there. It's warmed up to 18, 19 degrees. And it started snowing a little bit, but it's pretty dry still, and the snow don't amount to much. There's just a few flakes here and there. I think there's enough to make things white, but it's hard to tell because everything's already white with the frost. So the saw sat here for a couple hours, got pretty well cooled off, so I'll get it started and warmed up a little bit, gather up some of the other stuff, and then we'll get started. Instead of scrubbing that all out like that, one of the things they can do is just use a punch down in here. Just punch down here, clean out just enough to where the lag is going to go. This yellow cedar here was dead, standing dead. Well, that's a hell of a lot harder than the green one. I run out of the 5-inch lag screws, so I've got to go to some number 4s. And so I went deeper on this side to make sure I get enough bite into that post with that stringer. I don't know what happened. There was supposed to have been 12 number 5s in that container, and I wound up with 11. I'm sure there was 12 in there, and I'm sure that 12th one will show up one of these days, probably in a tire. But meanwhile, we'll use some 4s. oven, so. Five. That's pretty close right there, 105 on both of those. Looks like I don't have enough of them to use for a diagonal. I'll have to go get another one. Well, it's time to take the dogs for their evening run anyway, so I guess I'll put everything away. Go find another board for timber. Well, boy, here I was making such good progress too. I went up last night, yesterday evening, and got another pole when I took the dogs out for their evening run. Used the diagonal brace on this end panel here. I brought it home, and of course it was dark by the time I got home, so all I did was just lay it out there. And weather forecast was kind of right. They were forecasting an inch of snow last night, and we got about maybe 3 or 4 inches of snow overnight. And it's still snowing pretty steady. We got another couple of inches so far today. And the nice thing about it is that it's warmed up. It's about 24, 25 degrees right now. And that makes a big difference overnight. From the nighttime temperatures have been around 10 degrees or lower, right around there, and the daytime temperatures have been around 18. So 25, that's it warmed up to 21 overnight, 25 today. So that's a big difference in the amount of heat it takes, energy it takes to heat up the house. So that was a big deal. Problem is, it's only supposed to snow about 3 or 4 inches total, and then it's supposed to turn off and maybe even get up as high as 40 tomorrow, which is Sunday, and rain. Within the next week or so, it's supposed to be in the mid to upper 30s with rain, and that's going to be a real mess because we've had 2 weeks of good, hard, freezing weather. The ground is froze 6 inches or so deep, probably more than that on the driveway where I packed it in, running the Bobcat and stuff up and down it. So typically what happens here when it warms up like that, the ground's frozen and we get a lot of runoff, a lot of rain, and it freezes to the ground, so it winds up being a skating rink until it warms up enough for all the ice to melt. I'm going to work on this for a few minutes today and get that diagonal put on there and see what else I can do, and then I'm going to have to get the Bobcat started up and start plowing snow. I just went over looking for a broom to sweep the snow off of this stuff, and looked at the thermometer on the shop and put a piece of wood in the stove and looked at the thermometer, and temperatures moved up to 28 degrees now, so it's going up. Now this is yellow cedar that I've cut in here, and it's fairly hard wood for a softwood. And it's fairly abrasive, so it dulls the chains pretty fast. And then doing this over the rocks here, it's possible I get down into hit a rock once in a while or something. But so I went ahead and just run a file over the chain a little bit. Now that chain is pretty much wore out, but it's good enough for doing what we're doing here. It's still got some life in it. So anyway, I just touched the teeth up with the file a little bit. Now that's not the reason it's cutting so slow. You can see I haven't filed down the depth gauges on this for quite a while, the raker's depth gauges. And this is my wife's saw, so I don't need it to cut too aggressively, so I don't file those down too much. So anyway, that's why it's not cutting quite as aggressively as you might think. It's just because the depth gauges are not down. The teeth are fine, they'll still cut like that. That's not a problem. They're almost gone. It's about time to change that, but I get as much out of it as I can. I'll go ahead and start this up and warm it up. It's been in the hanger and it warmed up, so it's about 40 degrees in there, so it's not as bad as it was. But I'll still let it run a little bit to warm up. Get some of the other tools while that's warming up a little.